The Tipping Point with Mike Tipton is brought to you by Dubby. What is Dubby? Dubby is a clean energy drink that is made to give you focus with no crash, jitters, or angst like those other energy drinks have. They also have no maltodextrin fillers and don't use artificial dyes. Dubby contains vitamins, amino acids, a nootropic, and 150 milligrams of caffeine. W's products are made in the USA in an FDA inspected facility that strictly adheres to GMP manufacturing guidelines. All of the flavors are unique and custom made by W, and you'll never taste our taste anywhere else. The best part about it is they're affordable. W's drinks come out to about $1 per drink, much cheaper than Starbucks or any of those canned energy drinks. To learn more, visit w.gg.com/MRTipton33 and place your order today. Use promo code MrTipton33 and save today. W Energy, be better. Are you a fellow car guy? I have a 2008 Ford Mustang GT convertible, and nothing makes me happier in that car than when it's nice and clean. And you know who helps me get there? RevAutoCarCare.com. They help me get that pony looking as nice and shiny and ready for any of the car meetups that are all around the great city of El Paso. Spoil your car and go to RevAutoCarCare.com/Tipton and view all the inventory they have and find out what works for you to help make your ride shine. RevAutoCarCare.com/Tipton. Use promo code Tipton33 at checkout to save 15%. We all know there's hundreds of betting sites out there, but don't be fooled. Some sites are legal in some states only. Some sites pay in Bitcoin, and some sites have even been hacked. BetUS, however, has been in business for over 30 years. Future bets are paying out in the thousands, and if you act right now, you can still bet on the biggest games in sports. Visit BetUS.com, or you can click the link at nessp.info. BetUS, check it out and bet responsibly. It is the Tipping Point with Mike Tipton, hanging out with you here on a Tuesday. I woke up from an absolute nightmare where the Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl and Danny Hoban got to guest host the show, telling everybody that I make him call me Big Sexy. Now, I do, but I just didn't want the world to know that. It was supposed to be between us. And then after I woke up from this nightmare, I look at my phone and I realize, holy hell, it was true. Oh, woof. You talk about, once again, a terrible, terrible way to start a week is having the Philadelphia Eagles win a Super Bowl. Like that is a nightmare scenario for me. But you know what? I'm okay with it. We'll talk more about that later if the conversation leads us that way. Now, remember that the Tipping Point with Mike Tipton is brought to you by our friends over at RevAutoCarCare.com. That's RevAutoCarCare.com/Tipton. Use promo code Tipton33 and save up to 15%. Also, free shipping on any orders over $75. Guys, summer's coming up. I have a convertible. I don't like taking the convertible through those touchless car wash places because it messes up my rag top, all that stuff. Also, show your car a little bit of love. It does a lot of things for you. The least you can do is love it back. And, of course, by our friends over at W Energy. Now, Augustine going out there and saying, finally, some sense back into the show. LOL, how about them Eagles? You know, there's always that thought as you kind of get going, right? As you get closer to the big games where you kind of think to yourself, what if I'm wrong? And my whole scenario of what if I'm wrong was that the Eagles would win in a last second, style game. I don't think that even the most diehard, and I know a ton of them, but that even the most diehard Philadelphia Eagles fan would have thought to themselves that it would have been an absolute blowout. Like this game wouldn't even be close. That it would be basically over in the first quarter, right? Like obviously, whenever you go into the half, whenever you go into the half, and the score is 24-0, there's still that thing sitting in the back of your head where it's like, this is Patrick Mahomes. We saw him come back from a 25-point deficit a few years ago against Tennessee. We've seen him win games with 13 seconds left. There was still that little bit of hope. But as the third quarter ended and I won my square, shout out to my guy Carlos Rojas for putting that together. As the third quarter comes to an end, you kind of knew now it's just time to maybe possibly start giving up on this game, right? Like you probably should have done it at that point. If you're an optimistic person like I am, you held on a little bit later than what you should have. But there was no way in hell, none, that you would have thought to yourself, oh yeah, no, the Eagles are going to absolutely dominate and there's not going to be a question about it. Augustine saying, I thought it was going to be a competitive game, but that was just a massacre. Massacre is, again, a very nice way to put it, right? Like, I'm country as hell, for those of you that don't know, right? Like, I grew up, a farm basically here in Texas, and whenever we got in trouble, Dad would always be like, I'm going to take you out to the woodshed. We didn't have a woodshed. The Kansas City Chiefs were taken out to the woodshed. And then after Tommy was like, oh, now Augustine's an Eagles fan. Augustine's saying, yes, Tommy, I'm an Eagles fan out of spite, out of just pure, unadulterated spite. You can hear in my voice a little bit the remnants of my trip to Mexico. Probably shouldn't have done that into a microphone. I need to reach my board next time. My apologies for hearing me clear out my throat. I just want to give a shout out to the people that I went on to the tequila train with. A great time over there in Guadalajara. A great group of people. Some amazing memories that I will never, like truly, I will never forget. A phenomenal time out there. Shout out to Jose Cuervo for having that thing. That was a fun, and I mean a fun trip. Also to Danny Hoban, who was sitting out there saying, oh, this guy, he's going to have a hangover. It doesn't happen, my boy. Birthday's coming up soon. Fly your happy ass out here to El Paso. Find it out again, just like you did in Vegas, you nerd. Augustine saying, are the Eagles going to dominate for the next 5 to 7 years? It's hard for me to say that any team is going to dominate for 5 to 7 years, right? Like, having Saquon is a huge get for the Philadelphia Eagles. But let's not forget that this is one of the rare seasons where Saquon's been healthy. He does have a history of injury, right? That offensive line for the Kansas City Chiefs is getting older. Or not the Kansas City, the Philadelphia Eagles is getting older. What happened the last time the Eagles made it to a Super Bowl? They lose their offensive coordinator. They lose their defensive coordinator. It looks like now that they're going to lose their offensive coordinator. How important was Kellen Moore to this team? You know what I mean? You're going to have players picked out, all these different things like that. The rumors have always been all season long that A.J. Brown wants out of Philadelphia. He's finally got a ring. What does he need to prove, right? There's so many variables that it's hard for me to say that a team is going to be dominant and then define what dominant is, right? Is it winning their division? Because I can see a scenario where over the next couple of years, Washington usurps Philadelphia as the best team in the NFC East. Like, and no one should be surprised by that, right? Like Washington, again, I can't believe I'm saying this about the Washington effing Commanders, but there is the possibility that Washington, with all the cap space they have, with the great coaching that Dan Quinn has brought them, the young, affordable quarterback, that they can leapfrog Philadelphia in being the best team in the NFC East. Now, obviously, Philadelphia's motivation over the last couple of years has been we didn't like losing in the Super Bowl, and we didn't like the way that the 2023 season ended. Right, like going from 10-1 to being bounced in the first round of the playoffs has to suck for people. Right, they had that chip on their shoulder that they needed to prove something. That's something in sports, right? That is something in sports that we've got to talk about. Augustine is saying that Danny had a great show. He truly did. I was trying to come back just to jump on because I didn't want to jump on while I was in an Uber in Mexico, but I was trying to come back over the bridge and I stepped onto American soil right as he was about to end the show. And Danny, you did a great job. I know you ran out of gas there at the end, but you did a great job, my friend. I appreciate you filling in for your boy. Augustine, I know sometimes you said you wanted to come on the show too. Maybe a Friday we can work something out. I know that that's what you said in your schedule. Maybe we can do that as well. Tommy going out there just accusing Augustine of just being a bandwagon. I was going to say W word. I don't want to say that word. Like I don't think it's anything that my friends over at Roku and National Streaming Sports don't want me to say. I just don't want to say that word. My voice sounds like ass today. Augustine asking, how wasted did you get? That's the crazy part about me is like I can drink, right? And it's not like a flex. I'm not doing that. I think that's stupid. You'd be like, oh, I can drink like 97 beers or whatever. No, right? Like, but I can handle my alcohol. I was in the military, right? Like, there's nothing else to do in Goldsboro, North Carolina, but sit back and drink. So, how wasted did I get? I was having a good time, right? Like that's what I went there for. I didn't want to go over the top. I wanted to go so I could remember a lot of the things I knew my phone was more than likely going to die. It did, and I've got some amazing, mental memories of like an agave farm in outside of Guadalajara, like right outside of where the Cuervo distillery is. Some amazing pictures and stuff on my phone from the distillery that took up the majority of my memory on my phone now that I've got to try to like work some stuff through. But no, like it was just go out there, have a great time. We visited a lot of bars. We saw a lot of the I hate having really good peripheral vision because I see the comment come through and it's that. I think all right, for those of us that are watching the show that are a part of the show right now, I think what we all need to do is come together and create our own alcohol, and we'll call it Seymour Johnson. We'll name it after that Army Air Corps pilot that the base is named after, and it will be Seymour Johnson, whatever, like whatever drink it is that we're gonna have. But we can just be like, drink more, Seymour and then just Johnson at the end. Because if you say drink more, see more Johnson, it's not a great selling point. Or see more, drink more. Oh, look at that. We're working out the branding as we go. But no, like I said, like we saw a lot of like the nightlife and stuff like that. That there's the offer in Guadalajara. Saw a ton of his like historical buildings like the basilica and things like that, right? Like we went to a lot of the mercados and ate some amazing food. Like I don't think even living here in El Paso that I've eaten that much Mexican food in a sustained period of time. And if you saw my Instagram, one of the best breakfast places I've ever been to, and I'm not being hyperbolic, I'm just being honest, right? Like it was without a shadow of a doubt an amazing experience. And again, one that I will take with me for a lifetime. If you ever get the opportunity to do so, you need to go check out that tequila train. The knowledge base they have on it, I learned that I was drinking tequila all wrong my entire life. And it blew my mind. Like just blew my mind that you can actually drink tequila without it killing your throat. This is because of beer. Just a ton of beer that I had watching the Super Bowl. I went out somewhere and actually watched that damn game. What a waste of time. Tommy Cananzo saying he's not down. You're not down for that? You don't want to drink more, see more, or see more, drink more? Tommy Kanata saying, I bet it was. Glad you enjoyed yourself, Tip. I appreciate that. Not going to spend a whole bunch of time talking about it. I've already spent more time talking about it than what I am comfortable with. That's why I'm sweating a little. I'm also fat, so that might be why I'm sweating a little. I said it before somebody else did. That's called a preemptive strike right there in the world of Michael Tipton. Okay, so what I wanted to start today's show off with wasn't necessarily the Super Bowl, because that to me, it was such a terrible game, and it was just not fun, right? Like there was nothing about that game that made you want to know, or that made you want to really talk about it. Like Philadelphia, absolutely dominant. There's no question in this game, like who won, right? The great storyline of they get to redeem themselves. The one thing that I would say is terrifying, absolutely terrifying, is that after that game was done, Patrick Mahomes puts out a message to Chiefs Kingdom, and he's basically taking the entire loss on himself, which I believe is a hard thing to do. I know Danny yesterday was talking about the game plan, right? Like it felt like Travis Kelce was just kind of running, and then whenever it came to stuff, he wasn't moving the way that he should. I'm a firm believer that the entire game plan for the Kansas City Chiefs was in the first half to use Travis Kelce as a decoy for the majority of the game. And once Philadelphia caught on to that, no one else could do a thing. Like all Travis Kelce was a decoy. And to see that Andy Reid didn't make the adjustment is one, mind blowing, and two, kind of disappointing. Augustine saying, we want to know about your experience in Guadalajara. We want to know, well, we want to start the show with how many tequilas did you have? Are the Bills the only team that have a chance to beat my Eagles? No. I mean, I'm still putting Detroit up there, right? Like, I feel like Washington, Philadelphia wasn't the NFC Championship game that Detroit, Philadelphia would have been, right? And again, to me, you're going to start losing pieces. I know Detroit lost some pieces as well, right? So how are they going to bounce back? But I can still see a scenario where Kansas City comes back next year after Patrick Mahomes says, I'm taking all the blame and I'm going to come back better. Patrick Mahomes, the best quarterback in the NFL, has already said that he's just going to spend this offseason lamenting this loss in the Super Bowl to come back better. That is an absolutely terrifying proposition for anybody out there in the NFL, that Patrick Mahomes is going to have more motivation to be better. Also, I'm a big fan of the Bills. Like I think the Bills are a very well-built team. I wouldn't be surprised to see Cincinnati come out and start making some noise, right? Like this close. In the NFC, how are the 49ers going to bounce back? Let's not forget they had like 24 guys on IR, right? Like they had a really bad season. And then of course there's always going to be like those surprises, right? Does Philadelphia rest on their laurels now? Because it's so different being the hunter to being the hunted, right? Like that pressure of now you're the champ and everyone's out there trying to make a name off of your back. They beat you in the regular season. They're beating the defending champion. So you're going to get everybody's A game, just like what Kansas City got, right? You're going to get that because there's something about beating the champ that makes you feel better about stuff. Augustine saying it wasn't on Mahomes. That O-line got absolutely demolished, and that's it, right? Kansas City's got to find a way to shore up that offensive line. Maybe you go out and you get another weapon for Mahomes as Kelsey's getting older, and that's also the thing too. Like that first quarter for Kansas City was just full of drops. Xavier Worthy dropping balls, right? Like it was just one of those things. Obviously, you're getting Rashee Rice back, so that's going to give you an additional weapon that you didn't have in this game. But if I'm the Kansas City Chiefs, I have to address that offensive line. You have to capitalize on this window for Patrick Mahomes. Because what we're watching, even with that loss, what we're watching is history, right? It's to me, it's just one of those like the window to win is so small, even though it feels like Kansas City's been there the whole time. The window to win is so small that you have to capitalize on every bit of it. If you have this team coming back as constructed and all you have to do is fix your offensive line, fix your MFing offensive line and try to run it back, because now you're going to have that motivating factor again, right? Nobody likes to lose. And you can tell by looking at Patrick Mahomes and the way that he took that loss, he doesn't want to feel that way again. I will say though, how funny it was to see the memes that are out there where it was the first Super Bowl loss that Patrick Mahomes had was to Tom Brady. And then who was broadcasting the game? Tom Brady. Kansas City Chiefs fans have to be like, get that man the hell out of my life right now. Tommy Canazzo saying, I hate the Chiefs right now. I'm with you, my guy. I'm 100% with you. I don't want to say I hate them. I'm disappointed, right? Like, again, we speak about that a lot in sports, of like where you're kind of like the parent in sports and you're like, I'm not mad at you. I'm just disappointed because you knew watching that game that that wasn't the Kansas City Chiefs. It's not to take anything away from Philadelphia. Do not get me wrong. I am contrite. I apologize for doubting you most of the season. I know that there was a part there, Tommy, at the beginning of the show back in October where I told you I wouldn't be surprised to see Philadelphia in the Super Bowl, and you were like, nope. And I had to defend the Philadelphia Eagles, which felt gross to me. You made me do that, Tommy. But to see the Kansas City Chiefs just not show up and play so uncharacteristically was a huge disappointment for me. And I know it had to be for a ton of Kansas City Chiefs fans out there. And I know it had to be for people that hate the Philadelphia Eagles, right? That was not the Kansas City Chiefs team that we're used to seeing. Again, the Philadelphia Eagles dominated this game. Absolutely dominated this game. It was just, one of those things. Sometimes you're the windshield, other times you're the bug. This weekend, Kansas City was the bug and Philadelphia was the windshield. Like it just happens that way. Tommy Canazzo saying they need to write a bigger check to the Refs Association. Problem solved. I mean, there's no way in hell you watch that game on Sunday and you don't think to yourself, man, the refs are really, really, really giving the Philadelphia Eagles some outs. They really did. And you knew that was going to be the narrative. Like you knew that was 100% going to be the narrative. Augustine Pimentel saying the offensive line is the toughest position in the NFL and has the least public awareness. No, 100%. Like, I know some offensive linemen, and they just love being in the background, right? Like, that's what they do. And to me, I know, again, like, quarterback is extremely important. But outside of your quarterback, that offensive line, to me, is the most valuable position. That's where all the money should go. That's where the big names should be, right? Where you can look at like a Trent Williams and be like, as long as that guy's on the line, I know mine's safe, right? As long as Zach Martin's there, I know my quarterback is safe. You need that guy. Whenever you're good enough to have your name mentioned in a positive way as an offensive lineman and not just as, oh, number 77 with a false start, anytime you get a positive out of that, that's a huge win for you, right? Because you are so anonymous. But man, like Kansas City, like that's the only real issue that you can see with the Kansas City Chiefs, right? Is like the offensive line was bad, and it was bad all season. I don't know how many times we came on this show and you saw on other shows where it was almost like an echo chamber of, yeah, man, Kansas City's offensive line is pretty damn terrible. Tommy Canazzo saying, why do you have to bring up old crap, Mike? I don't recall that. I'm not, Tommy. My apologies. Again, I woke up from a nightmare. Philadelphia won. Danny Hoban was telling people that I make him call me Big Sexy. I do. But that's like good, like a. I mean, who out there doesn't have their friends call them big sexy? Like, let's be honest. Marlene Salcedo saying, "Tip, I missed you. Hello there, sir. Hello to you as well. Missed all of y'all on the show in the comment section. I absolutely. So yesterday it was tough for me, right? Because I love being front facing. I'm not so much in love with the camera. I'm in love with the microphone, right? And to me, being in the comment section was fun yesterday, right? Like just trolling on Danny because I like to make him sweat. But I missed this so much over the last couple of days. I know Thursday, Friday, pre-recorded shows, it's not the same, right? Because I like having the interaction with y'all. And I mean that sincerely, right? Like, I mean, how many times have I sent messages to like Augustine Tommy to Medusa Marlene and just been like, hey, what do we think about this? Or vice versa, right? Like that's what I genuinely love about this. Augustine, I'm not putting that comment up, but that is hilarious. Jesus Christ, man. But like I genuinely miss this. Like the conversation, like being able to do this stuff. So thank you all for sticking through it. I know sometimes it's got to be a little difficult to wake up in the morning and have to deal with all of my nonsense and all the things like that. Tommy Canazza saying that he turned off the Super Bowl at a 24-0 and started binge watching Survivor. Man, I don't blame you. I guess that's going to have to be a show on another show because I don't want to do that to my friends over here with National Streaming Sports. But I'm just going to say this. If you didn't get the halftime show, good. You're not meant to get the halftime show. If you did get the halftime show, good. You were meant to get the halftime show. Not going to go into much more detail after that, but there was more than meets the eyes. There always is. Look beyond face value in things, people. Jesus. Tommy Canazza saying, I saw the Eagles win a Super Bowl on Sunday, and then I watched Luka play in a Lakers jersey on Monday. Look at that. Boom. Easy transition. Thank you, Tommy. I appreciate it so much. I haven't gotten to the halftime show yet. I know the expectation for a halftime show is to be, eyes blown out and you want entertainment and you want all that. There was messaging behind all the stuff that goes along with having the hit song that's basically making fun of a guy, calling him a pedo, right? Like there's things like that. Again, I'm not going to get into the weeds on it on this platform because I respect my partners at National Streaming Sports and at Roku. So I know I need to make up for the Miriam Adelson stuff. I'll get to that a little bit later on today. I'll be posting those out on social media. I promise. I've got one appointment today. The rest of it is just free for your boy. So we'll see how we go with that. But yes, on Sunday you watch. Oh. Jesus Christ. Why would you even say that then? Why would you put it in the comment section? No one needs to see that crap. Just text it to me. You have my number. Like, Jesus, man. Yes, Luka Doncic has his debut yesterday with the LA Lakers. And you know what? Great for them. Great for them, right? Like, you have to be smart whenever you have these players coming back from injury, right? You protect them from other outside factors. If you debut Luka Doncic and you lose, doesn't matter what he did, it's a terrible debut, right? You protect him by letting Luka get a start against the Utah Jazz, who by no, like, I'm not being a jerk here, but they're just not a good team. 12-40 on the season. They've played 52 games. They've won 12 of them, right? They're not a good team at this moment. So that's exactly what you want Luka to come back against, right? Is a team that's bad. If you just play your game, you're going to win this game. So you had the W check mark. It's in there, right? Then you want to see, how does Luka play in the truncated timetable that Luka's going to be playing, right? And he played right? Like it wasn't great. And I think that's the solace that you take out of it is like, okay, well, he was rusty, but at least they won the game, right? Like, and it wasn't just a win. They dominated. They dominated the Utah Jazz, as they should, because the Utah Jazz, as we said earlier, 12-40 on the season. Luka goes out yesterday, gets 14 points, 5 boards, 4 assists, 24 minutes. 5 of 17 from the field, 1 of 7 from 3. That to me wasn't necessarily, and you're right, Tommy, like it was just it wasn't great, but I don't think anybody really expected greatness after being gone for a little over a month and a half, right? Like it was more like, let's just see him out there. Let's see how he meshes with LeBron. The one thing that I would say that would worry me if I'm an LA Lakers fan, or if I'm someone that's supporting LeBron or Luka or any of that, right? Is that there was very, very little spacing whenever LeBron and Luka were out on the court together. There was one play where I saw 3 Lakers in the paint, one kind of on the wing, but not outside the 3-point line, and then one over by the 3-point line. There was a lot of discombobulation. They were lucky enough they were playing the Jazz, because I think a better team would have taken advantage of that. It was just, right? Like that's all it came down to. Tommy Canazza saying that Anthony Davis scored 26 points at halftime. But he's also out, what is it, a month maybe, and possibly indefinitely, right? That was the caveat for the Dallas Mavericks. That was what we needed from the Dallas Mavericks, was that you needed Anthony Davis to be healthy. This trade was not going to work no matter what, but you needed Anthony Davis to be healthy. Then he goes out with an abductor and is told 2 to 4 weeks. I've been hearing stuff where it might be just shut him down to the playoffs, which would be a nightmare scenario for the Dallas Mavericks. And they've been going through a lot of issues, right? Like, that's one of the things that the Mavericks, and they brought it upon themselves. Whenever you trade Luka Doncic, you have to be ready and willing to take any type of negative feedback that's going to be coming your way. And it's just a matter of fact that when you trade a player like that, you are going to tick off your fan base. And what you need is to protect your general manager and your coach. If you're the owner, you're the one that signed off on this trade, you need to protect your player and your coach. Tommy Cananza saying, I effing hate Nico. And no one can blame you at this moment, right? No one can blame you at this juncture, because it hasn't been a good trade for the Dallas Mavericks at this point. And it more than likely won't ever be. But the owner needs to come out, Patrick Dumont, who's the governor of the Dallas Mavericks, because of the issues that the Mavericks were going to have with Miriam Adelson being the person that was going to run the team. Once again, I need to talk about that on a different platform. But Patrick Dumont comes out as the guy that's going to stop stoking the flames, right? And he says, quote, if you look at the greats in the league, the people that you and I grew up with, the Michael Jordans, the Larry Birds, the Kobe Bryants, the Shaquille O'Neals, they worked really hard every day with a singular focus to win. And if you don't have that, it doesn't work. And if you don't have that, you shouldn't be a part of the Dallas Mavericks. That's who we want. I am unwavering on this. The entire organization knows this. This is how I operate outside of basketball. This is the only way to be competitive and win. If you want to take a vacation, don't do it with us. I cannot for the life of me understand why this is still a thing that the Dallas Mavericks are doing. scratch that the ownership of the Dallas Mavericks are doing. And it's just a complete and utter character assassination for a guy that was the face of your franchise. Even if he wasn't working that hard, he was still producing for your team. He was still making your team better. I don't understand how or why this has to continue being a talking point for the Dallas Mavericks to just go out there and assassinate the character of Luka Doncic as he was just out of shape. He was this, he was that, he was blah, 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 blah. Tommy Canasta saying, who said that? That is the governor slash owner of the Dallas Mavericks, Patrick Dumont. The owner of a franchise cannot come out and say that. Those type of scathing remarks about his former franchise player and expect to be above criticism. Now, granted to him, I will say this, good job on him for actually going out and showing up to the game, because a lot of other people would not have done that. They just flatly wouldn't have done it. But can we stop with the character assassination of Luka? You've already traded him. You've cost him $117 million in what potential earnings he could have. It's just a ridiculous thing for the Dallas Mavericks fan base, who doesn't deserve this, to have to deal with, right? And then you fast forward to yesterday's game. And the Mavs are at home. Mark Cuban's in his seat. Patrick Dumont's in his seat. You have fans who are obviously and rightfully frustrated with what happened with this trade. And they're saying things like, fire Nico. And they're yelling and they're doing all that, right? That's what fans are going to do. I don't know what the rules are for American Airlines Arena, but we learned that there were a handful of fans that got kicked out of the arena for chanting and yelling at Mark Cuban. And Mark Cuban turns around and says, well, effing sit down and shut the F up, right? The way the Mavericks are handling this just looks bad. Like all of it, down to the, oh, well, we've got to continue talking that Luka was fat and out of shape and he didn't want to be here with the team and blah, 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 blah. So the fans that were yelling at Mark Cuban, they get kicked out. Then apparently there's a drunk fan with a T-shirt that said something bad about ownership in Dallas, and then he gets kicked out. And all that does is, again, stoke the fire of, we don't know what we're doing with this GD franchise. And it's just one of those, like, Tommy's saying it, right? Like, Luka had nothing but great things to say about Dallas. We read the thing on here the other day, his press release about the city of Dallas, like how much he loved Dallas. And it's one of those things where it's like, you feel just this weird, like whenever you have a friend that breaks up with like their significant other and you guys were friends for a long time and you feel like, oh God, what happens if I see them, in like person with another, you know what I mean? Like those weird, it's like we're watching a breakup and you know who's at fault. And you see the other person is just like trying to live their life, and the other party is just trying to, constantly down talk them and do all that, right? Like, that's what this feels like. It feels like we've witnessed one of the worst divorces in the history of like people. Augustine asking, are the Dallas Mavericks, or is the Dallas Mavericks front office the laughing stock of the NBA? Right now, they have to look that way. It all starts at the top, right? Whenever you have a trade like this, and you can tell by his words that this was called on by Patrick Dumont. This is what the Dumont family and the Adelson family wanted, was to trade Luka Doncic. Let's get him off our payroll. We're not going to pay him the $344 million. Go out, be somebody, right? But whenever you do that, you have to come out before a whole week goes out and say, These are the reasons why we traded him. These were our concerns. We don't have to be complete jerks of it. Thank you so much for being a part of the team. We appreciate all you did in leading us to the NBA Finals. Let's go ahead and move on and welcome Anthony Davis. Like they're putting Anthony Davis now in a lose-lose situation because they keep doubling down on this. Well, he was out of shape and he wasn't available. And Luka's, blah, 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 blah. But Luka got to play yesterday. You know who didn't? Anthony Davis. And Luka's probably going to play again next week. And you know who's not? Anthony Davis. You keep assassinating the character of Luka Doncic, and all you're doing is ultimately, like, AD is going to come out one of these games because that's the guy you're saying is the one who has to be here because he has to be available. And the fans are going to boo Anthony Davis despite Anthony Davis not having anything to do with this. The worst part about that is now you have ownership who has proven that no player out there on the team or otherwise is above him being like, I just don't want you here anymore. So now you're gone. Now the Dallas Mavericks are going to have a harder time being able to sign free agents. Like, again, going back to like whenever you see people making mistakes and they just keep making the same mistake and you're like, my God, I wish I could get them to stop making that mistake, and they don't. There's nothing wrong with taking an L. Absolutely nothing wrong with it. But the Dallas Mavericks just don't seem to have that in them, right? With being a little on the, like, maybe I can be a little better side of the, like, you don't have to go out there and say all the things that you've said about Luka Doncic and then expect the fans to just be absolutely happy with you all the time. If you're going to make dumb decisions, you deal with the consequences. And it feels like the Dallas Mavericks just don't want to do that. Another team that was out there that is now kind of dealing with consequences of their own that was created by an owner making dumb decisions is the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now, those of you that don't know, the Minnesota Timberwolves were sold to Alex Rodriguez. Yes, that Alex Rodriguez, baseball playing legend, the people's champion, Alex Rodriguez, and one of his business partners, Mark Lowry. Obviously, they're the heads of the group. They buy the Minnesota Timberwolves from Glenn Taylor, the octogenarian owner of the Minnesota Timberwolves, and it's supposed to be what's called a step transaction in the NBA. If you don't know what a step transaction is, it is you buy this amount of ownership. So, like, let's call it 30% of ownership at this day. And then you have up until this day to get up to the controlling amount of 51%, slightly a little more. I'm just not going to mess with you on the math right now, to become the controlling partner of it. But they give you X amount of time to make these payments, right? So it's, you put down that 33% right there. Then in a couple of months, the next percent to get you up to 40. Then in a couple of months, the next percent to get you to 45, and so on and so forward. You are taking steps up the ladder in order to buy the team. Alex Rodriguez and his group made all their payments on time. Alex Rodriguez and their group bought the team at the time for $1.5 billion. $1.5 billion. As they're, going through the step transaction, it comes out that the value of the NBA teams has gone up because of the value of the TV contracts and a couple of the other things that are, ancillary, I don't want to say issues, but contributors to what increases the value of a team. And it turns out that now the Minnesota Timberwolves are valued at $3.1 billion. So just like that, they increase by 100%. Like they go from 1.5 to 3.1. They've doubled in value. Glenn Taylor, the now former owner of the Minnesota Timberwolves, is like, well, I don't want them to pay me at the 1.5 bill. I want them to pay me at the 3.1. None of us can blame him at that. None of us can blame him on that. But in their contract, there's no statement about if the value goes up, you got to pay whatever the X amount of value is, right? Just make the payments, buy the team. So what does Glenn Taylor start doing? He starts trying to block Alex Rodriguez and his partner, Mark Lowry, from buying the team. So now Glenn Davis, who's the 51% owner of the team, starts buying other people's part of the team. So now he's the controlling guy. He's going to stay the controlling guy because he's not going to share his part with Alex Rodriguez and his group, even though he said he would, even though it's a part of their contract. Then he comes up with this thing where he wants to slander the words of, or I guess who Alex Rodriguez is. He wants to just slander him. He's like, oh, they're poor. They didn't make the payments. Alex Rodriguez and his group are like, here's all the payments that were made. What the hell are you talking about? And Glenn Taylor does like the petty stuff of like, well, I'm not going to let A-Rod sit next to the team. I'm sure a lot of you remember pictures and videos of Alex Rodriguez sitting on the sideline of Minnesota Timberwolves games as they're like welcoming him in as the new owner of the team. Now you're not allowed in the building. Now you're not allowed to do this. Even though you're a 47% owner, you can't do anything. You can't even go to the owner's suite because he's just being a crotchety old man. They take it to court, and less than a year later, the courts rule that Alex Rodriguez and his team are now going to be the owners of the Minnesota Timberwolves because what this man did was illegal. But they're going to get the Minnesota Timberwolves at the $1.5 billion price. So think about that. In the time that he hasn't even owned the team, Alex Rodriguez and his group have now doubled the value of the franchise, and it's already a financial win for them at $3.1 billion. It goes from 1.5 to 3.1 billion. Glenn Taylor and the rest of the NBA current owners get to talk about all of the like the NBA ownership, current ownership gets together and they have to approve who the next owner of a franchise is going to be. They always have to do that. It always comes down to a vote. And Alex Rodriguez is going to become, him and his group are going to become the next owners of the Minnesota Timberwolves. It's already written down. It's going to happen. And you talk about just an interesting sports financial story because like that's what I love, right? Like the business of sports, the transaction of sports. And to see this guy basically get what he deserves in Glenn Taylor and be unceremoniously dumped out is going to be great. Now, Alex Rodriguez isn't going to be the guy that's in charge of all the day-to-day operation stuff. That's going to be Mark Lowry. That's basically the same position that Patrick Dumont has with the Dallas Mavericks. Mark Lowry is going to be the governor of the Minnesota Timberwolves. A-Rod is just the handsome, chiseled face of ownership in the NBA right now. A lot of y'all probably didn't find that as fascinating as I did because, again, I absolutely love like the business of sports. But, man, Augustine saying we got to do something. Tanking in the USA leagues have no consequences. Okay. So I agree, right? Like there has to be consequence. You get rewarded, you get the best draft pick, but what do you propose it would be? Because relegation, like as much as you want it, it's not going to be on the table, right? Like these franchises are too valuable to be dropped down the way that, you know, they do in the European leagues. The American model just doesn't allow for that. So what would your suggestion be? Is it the like the worst team doesn't get the number one overall pick? Like they get the last pick, like we reverse it, right? The best team now gets the number one overall pick. The worst team gets the, you know, number 32 overall pick. Then now it's just going to create, okay, well, this team's going to be bad for year after year, right? What would be the suggestion that you have of fixing the system right now? Because relegation, like I said, that's off the table. Maybe we can do it in Major League Baseball where the franchises are not as valuable as what they are in the NBA and the NFL. You can't do it in the NFL because there's not another league that you can say is out there competing, right? The NBA owns the G League. Major League Baseball owns the minor leagues. So it's not it's not as easy as just okay, well, let's relegate this team back. Like it's not necessarily a thing that they can do. And maybe I'm wrong in this, but I don't know, and I'll have to do some more research on it. If like the Premier League owns the lower leagues in, UEFA or whatever. But I agree. Like there's got to be something that gets fixed, but all the things we can think of aren't going to be the thing that fixes tanking. Now, the Dallas Mavericks and stuff like that, I don't want to necessarily know or I don't want to necessarily say they're tanking. I believe that there's other outside factors that are into play here, but it's not a good look for the team. Like it really isn't. And it feels like the Dallas Mavericks are just going through the bad part of it, right? Like there's the roller coaster of success and stuff like that that happens in sports, and the Dallas Mavericks are on the part where it's just crashing down, and you're hoping that it's not too long that they get to go on another come up. But it just doesn't feel like that is going to be the main and primary focus of this ownership group with the Dallas Mavericks. Man, got a lot of stuff to say about the Dallas Mavericks. It's insane, man. It genuinely is insane. I am powering through it, guys. I'm trying my best to get through this right here. Looking over some of the headlines out here, they're saying that a record amount of people watched the Super Bowl. It was 126 million U.S. viewers were watching the Super Bowl this past weekend. I feel like every year the NFL comes out here and says, no, 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 no. There was so much more people watching the Super Bowl than ever before. I want to know how many of that 126 million, like, was that the peak? Was that the amount that actually, stayed and watched? Like, was that sustained viewership? Like, what was it that makes you say 126 million viewers in the US, almost half the total population of the United States, was watching the Super Bowl? And again, like, I don't doubt it. Like, the Super Bowl, great. It's always going to be like the number one thing on TV in the United States. Tommy can also saying, not with that front office, there won't be. And then going out here and saying, and I'm glad that you brought it up, Tommy, because that's exactly where I was going. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Super Bowl, and then I want to talk about coaching hires that I've seen happening over the over the last couple of days, where it's like, man, you can tell one team is really trying to just tank. And that team is the Dallas Cowboys. And looking at all of the stuff that's surrounding the Dallas Cowboys, they go out, they hire a new head coach that nobody was wanting in Brian Schottenheimer. They go out and they hire Ken Dorsey, who was with the Buffalo Bills, had an absolute meltdown in the booth, and then ultimately gets fired for not being able to utilize Josh Allen, the way that he should utilize him. And then it comes out that the Dallas Cowboys are signing a coach from UTEP. Tommy Canazzo says the Cowboys are signing a coach from UTEP just when I thought it couldn't get any worse being a fan of this Dallas Cowboys team. How are you going to say it's horrid if you didn't watch it? Like, I understand what you're trying to do here. Augustine is, guys, if you don't know, Augustine's trying to say that he was having sex. Good for you, my guy. I'm so glad that you're out there doing your thing. But how are you going to say it's horrid if you didn't watch it, right? Like that's one of those things. Like, I feel like you just get caught in an echo chamber of, oh, well, my friend said he didn't watch it, so therefore I didn't watch it. If I'm not mistaken, there was a commercial that aired multiple times of Tom Brady and Snoop Dogg talking about that exact same thing about what an echo chamber can do. But the Dallas Cowboys, I'm trying to find the name of the individual that the Dallas Cowboys just hired, because he was a defensive coordinator. Because he was a Dallas Cowboys defensive coordinator, or a defensive coordinator for the UTEP Miners. Just trying to see what the guy's name is. Well, and that shows you how bad it is that he's not even in like the top 12 headlines here of, there we go, JJ Clark. UTEP's defense was terrible. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like it was an absolutely terrible defense. Now, good for him for capitalizing on it, being able to go up and increase his value as a coach in the future. But there's nothing on this hire that makes me say, "Oh man, I'm inspired now." Right? Maybe it's because we're so close to seeing what it is with UTEP that like we get to see more or less like what's going on, right? Like we know what UTEP's defense was, and to see that that's who the Dallas Cowboys are hiring to be like a special assistant to the defense. If I'm not mistaken, like UTEP's defense was ranked number 93rd. I probably should have looked into it a little bit better. Maybe like in the 80s of like just the worst defenses in college football. Nothing about that is inspiring for the Dallas Cowboys. Tommy Canazzo saying at least they're letting Brian Schottenheimer pick his own staff. There's no more nepotism. Whenever you're a Nepo baby, I feel like you go a little too hard. And maybe that's what they're doing, right? We just figured it out. Guys. You got to remember, going back to the original opening press conference of Jerry Jones being like, this is me taking a risk on a guy. Taking a risk on a guy that's never been a head coach. I'm getting out of my comfort zone. I'm giving somebody a chance. That's what the Dallas Cowboys are doing. They're getting JJ Clark. They're giving him a chance. Would have never made it to the NFL if not for Brian Schottenheimer and the Dallas Cowboys handing out the charity of coaching hires that they have. Ken Dorsey would not have been an offensive coordinator in the NFL this year. I don't think it would have been an offensive coordinator anywhere if not for the charity that the Dallas Cowboys are putting out there. Tommy Canazzo saying, I do like some of their coaching hires. I know, like Junior Adams being like the receivers coach, like that's okay, just because Oregon's always had a great offense, like receiving wise. The issue to me isn't the Dallas Cowboys receiving core, right? Like obviously there's a lack of talent there. It's more along the lines of like you want somebody there that you can say inspires you. The receiving coach isn't going to be the guy that's, implementing the entire playbook. I wanted to see a better hire just in general with the Dallas Cowboys, and they're the Dallas Cowboys and all they do is disappoint. Augustine saying tips or a consequence for tanking. What can those consequences be besides relegation? Again, like that's something that we're going to have to try to think about over the next couple of the next couple of years, right? Like what can be done? What can genuinely be done to protect fan bases from owners and general managers and office staff that wants to genuinely tank, right? Like because we saw it with Philadelphia. Trust the process. We're going to be bad for a whole decade. We're going to stock up on all these picks, and hopefully we're going to be good at the end of the at the end of the day, right? Tommy Canassa saying Clayton Adams is a good choice for offensive coordinator. From the moves they're making, it seems like they will be committed to running the ball. So we will see. We will see. For the Dallas Cowboys, I have zero faith in them doing anything except disappointing me. There's one thing I know the Dallas Cowboys will do, and that is absolutely and genuinely disappoint me. All right, everyone, I want to thank you so much for tuning into today's show. We will be back tomorrow continuing to have the conversation about the NBA, the NFL, whatever it is y'all want to talk about. We'll see you all then. Have a good week, or a good day, I should say.